Which SEC team got the best draw in the NCAA tournament? Blake Lovell will join us to answer that very question.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. Blake Lovell of Southeastern 16 will join us to talk all things SEC and the NCAA tournament. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, as we get into it, the SEC with a record 14 teams into the NCAA tournament, and to talk all about it with us is our buddy Blake Lovell of Southeastern 16. He joins us now. Blake, welcome in, man. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, Chris. As we were joking. It's like, hey, it's a little bit different than even 5-6 years ago. It's a lot of teams to cover here when it comes to how many SEC teams are in the NCAA tournament. But yeah, what an exciting time for SEC basketball, and this is kind of what it's been building towards, is this week right here. So
yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. It's been the ones I've been saying this for so many years. Men's basketball is the one sport that the SEC does not dominate in, right? I mean, even women's basketball, they've had their fair share. Baseball, track and field, of course, football, but like men's basketball, it's been John Calipari going on 13 years now since they won a national championship. So it's been the one sport. I think it is, like, when people are saying, okay, 14 teams in the tournament, I think the SEC should take a bow. I mean, watching the games this year, I think you'd agree, this was the most fun I think we've ever had watching SEC basketball action.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we know what the narrative will be if the SEC were to not win the national championship, get multiple teams in the Final Four, whatever criteria I think people may want to use on a national scale. But to me, I'm like, hey, what you've done over a 35-game stretch is still pretty important, no matter what happens. And again, we know how to be judged throughout the years, and I get it. Everyone's playing for a championship. And when you have this many teams kind of in that position to get to a Final Four, win a national championship, you should have, one or two or more of those teams get an opportunity. But it still is not going to take away, I think, just how dominant of a regular season it was. Certainly go back to non-conference play, and then just to see, again, how these teams continue to develop throughout conference play, and now, to see the bubble teams get hot at the right time to give the SEC this many teams in. Because remember, a couple weeks ago, it's like, they may get 11, may get 12. Well, no. Right teams got hot at the right time, and it was kind of the perfect scenario, I think, for the league. So,
before we get into matchups and draws and all that, just kind of on the surface, what SEC team do you just look at on the surface and just go, that is a team that I think is best poised to win a championship? Because for a while there, it looked like Auburn. It still might be Auburn, but they lose 3 out of their last 4. But like, I don't know, which team, put it this way, like, do you have the most confidence in right at this minute?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. If you had told me that Florida's second round, 8-9 game would be like Mississippi State and Baylor, I would breeze through this question and be like, it's easily Florida. But the fact that UConn is just sitting there, staring down Florida as a potential second round matchup, I can't get myself just to completely ignore the idea that somehow UConn, who is 12-0 in these last 2 tournaments, is going to find a way to make another run. I can't get past it. But if I just look beyond the name and the recent history with them, to me, Florida's the best team in the tournament right now. And I think it's just the way they've been playing. Even Duke, I know what Duke's been doing, and I understand they've looked really good. But I think when you consider the competition, I think Florida's probably the best team in this tournament right now, because they have just been, I said it to someone earlier, right? They look like that Florida team that just was about to win back-to-back national championships, running through the rest of the SEC way back when, heading into March. And then what do? They went and won the championship again. And I think that's kind of the way they feel right now. And, when you look at, again, how they've played against the top-tier teams, that to me is the most important thing. Look at the success they've had against these other teams, at the top of the SEC. And I think that is something specifically that makes me feel pretty good about them heading into this tournament. And to be honest, like, beyond that potential second-round matchup with UConn, everybody keeps talking about how the West seems to be the toughest region. I just don't agree with that. I think it's one where if Florida were to get that second round matchup, not to ignore our fellow SEC member Oklahoma, I just think UConn's a tough matchup for them. I think Florida is going to the Final Four. I think they match up well with everybody else in that bracket.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the bracket and you see Florida is sitting there as, as the 1 seed there. And yeah, I mean, the UConn team, what sticks out to me, Blake, is when you look at a lot of the teams that are typically the big blue bloods that didn't have the best years, like they're sitting there at the 7, 8, 9 seeds. And it's like, there's Kansas at a 7, there's UConn at an 8, there's Baylor at a 9. Like those are still teams that like in March can get on a heater, and they're built for this. Even though they didn't have the best regular seasons, this is the time of year those type of teams shine.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's one of the best points when you look at this bracket. It's almost as if the committee is daring the SEC to prove it, right? Because you have Oklahoma playing the defending back-to-back national champion UConn in the West region. You have Arkansas playing the former number 1 team in the country this year in Kansas in the West region. You have Gonzaga playing Georgia, who the Zags are by no means a profile of a number 8 seed, even though we kind of understand why they got it. They still, all the data loves Gonzaga as a top 15, top 10 team in the country. So they're playing Georgia. And then you said Baylor, who won a national championship not long ago, is playing Mississippi State. So you do look at all these teams and you look at the coaches for these teams, and you're thinking, these are the ones the SEC got paired against in the first round. Some of those, 50-50 type games. The SEC is stuck with a lot of teams who you're like, if I'm betting against that coach, it may not be the best idea because of how much success that all those kind of teams have had. And so, I mean, even, Ole Miss, North Carolina now, right? Look at North Carolina. I mean, they sit there and had a 40-point lead on San Diego State, in terms of that first 4 game. And so it is kind of wild the way these matchups set up with the SEC teams, but that's why they do this in March. The games aren't played on paper, not played on history. It's just now, and these aren't the easiest matchups, though.
Give me a team you think got the toughest draw, like the team, if you had to bet money on, is guaranteed absolutely going to lose in round 1.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think it's probably Oklahoma, because I just feel like, again, to me, it's a matchup-based thing. I mean, I know how good Jeremiah Fears has been. I know how good that Jalen Moore can be. It's just, for me, it's the matchup and looking at, UConn's a team I know that hasn't kind of hit that next gear this season. But if you look at it, the one thing we had questions about with Oklahoma coming into the year was their front court. And I'm like, I look at this potential matchup against the UConn team that rebounds the ball really, really well. Oklahoma's not a great rebounding team. And if we know, right, like it feels like UConn kind of bullied their way to that first national championship where they just came out and they just out-physical team. They were tougher in those things. I almost wonder if that's how they're going to have to do it this time around. Like last year was different. We're like, all right, these guys are just made to do this again. This year, though, I think they're going to have to use that physical type play, and I just feel like there are a lot of areas that they can exploit with Oklahoma's weaknesses. So I'd probably make that as the most probably difficult matchup. And again, all the others feel somewhat manageable for the SEC, but I just think that's a tough one.
More with Blake Lovell in just a second, but first I want to remind you about our friends over at Upwork. And look, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork is going to give your business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork is going to make hiring simple and affordable. And of course, they're going to help you find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day with multiple qualified candidates to choose from, they are going to take care of you. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Go visit Upwork.com right now. Go post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Fabric. And look, life moves fast, especially when you have a family. And one day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That is why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes. And in many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, you want to make sure your family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric is going to give you that peace of mind. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day, so protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes. That's at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege, meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Continue our conversation with Blake Lovell of Southeastern 16, previewing a little bit of the SEC teams in the NCAA tournament. And Blake, let's talk about a couple of the other top teams. We're talking about Florida. Auburn, to me, look, I know they lost 3 of the last 4. I've loved every minute of watching Janai Broom this year. I think Bruce Pearl is a hell of a coach. I don't think he can go down, Blake, and say, like, this is the best team we've ever had at Auburn, and then lose on the first weekend. Like, to me, this is a team that has got to go deep.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that anytime you're the top overall seed, I think that your goal has to be to get to the Final Four. Anything less, I think, is a disappointment. And again, fair, unfair, I just think when you're put in that position and you've earned that spot, this is the time you prove it. Like I said, there's no reason, no matter what happens here, that we shouldn't look back on Auburn and say, man, they had a historic regular season. But, the thing people are going to talk about more is they had an historic regular season and they won the national championship. That's going to get all the attention, and the stories that are told many years from now, it's going to be about that. And so I'm with you, and, Bruce Pearl said it as much this past week here in Nashville. He's not panicked. He's not concerned. And I think he made a great point, so I decided to go look at the numbers, and he's right. He's like, look who we've lost to. And if you, like I am, the madman over here, I did the average, KenPom ranking of every single team that the top 4 seeds have lost to. So I took every of the top, 16 teams in this tournament, and I said, what's the average ranking of all those teams' opponents who beat them? And you looked at Auburn's, and it is just stunning. It is 6. 6 is the number. Like that, the teams that have beaten them have an average rating of 6 in the rankings in KenPom. That is absurd. They've not lost to anyone bad. They've lost to a lot of great teams. Meanwhile, the second closest team was like Houston at 13. And then Alabama was at 13. Tennessee was 14 or 15 and so forth. Like, that, it just shows you that I don't think we could completely just say, all right, Auburn's done for. But I do want to see them kind of get that chip on the shoulder again. Because I feel like when they wrapped up the SEC regular season title a couple weeks ago, everyone, including myself, kept saying, well, Auburn could literally just twiddle their thumbs for the next couple weeks because they're the number 1 overall seed. Nothing else matters. And it kind of seemed that way sometimes. But yeah, when you look at it, they lost to Texas A&M, who was due for a big home game, lost to Alabama at the buzzer, and they lose to a surging Tennessee team, in the SEC tournament. I'm like, is there anything really that bad about that? And there's not. So I look at this, everybody's pointed out, as you know, Chris, like, Louisville's playing in Lexington. I get it. Well, they got to beat Creighton first before they get to Auburn. Michigan just won the Big Ten. I get it, but I think Michigan get beat in the first or second round by either San Diego, A&M, or Yale. And then I keep looking down. I'm like, I see pass. Iowa State's not fully healthy. Michigan State could get beat in the second round by a Marquette or New Mexico. So I'm like, I don't see Auburn's path as just this doom and gloom as some people do. I think they are set up for a Final Four run.
2 more in that South region. One, look, congrats to North Carolina. They won, man. Like, the worst thing you could tell a team is you don't belong in the tournament. It's like they have that chip on their shoulder. Like, I think Ole Miss is in trouble. Like, I keep seeing the line. They're, North Carolina's a 1.5 point favorite now. Like, they're supposed to beat Ole Miss. And then the other one, man, like, I keep looking at the numbers. A&M, man, like, they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country. Yale's one of the best 3-point shooting teams. A&M can't make free throws. Like, I just keep looking at it going, why is A&M still favored? That almost feels like a lock that Yale's going to pull off the upset.
Yeah, to start with the Ole Miss one, there's probably a meme out there you can make about my emotions on going from Monday to today on Ole Miss. Whereas on Monday, I was like, hey, there's my sleeper Elite 8 type team. It's the Rebels. Like, I love the fact that they got old guards. They're experienced. They're coached by a defensive wizard and Chris Beard. They're going to play teams that have similar styles, Michigan State, Iowa State. This is great. And then when we did our preview video today, I said, I'm picking North Carolina. And then I looked at what I saw from that team, and I've seen this before, right? Teams get hot in Dayton. And also, Chris, let's bring this up. When's the last time a team got to play on Tuesday in Dayton and then didn't have to play again until Friday evening? I don't know that that's ever happened, but guess who got that treatment? It was North Carolina. They don't have to play Thursday. They don't have to play till Friday. So they get the extra day. They just look like an absolute machine, which, like I said earlier, if Kansas finds that magic, teams like that who we've seen before, North Carolina is another one of those teams. And I just think, like you said, I don't love that matchup as much for Ole Miss anymore. With Texas A&M, I mean, you brought it up. They have to be, cumulative. The numbers have to be one of, if not the worst shooting team from multiple areas in this entire field, maybe. And when I look at it from that standpoint, I'm thinking, if we were going to pick the Yale upset, why did some people think it was going to happen last year, which it did? That profile for Auburn was a lot stronger than that profile is for Texas A&M right now, and you've got some of those similar pieces for Yale. So the only thing that I can come up with for Texas A&M to try to push that they will be fine here is that they do what they always do, right? They're a team that's just going to get inside, and they are just going to get every single rebound on every brick that they throw up. Whether it's a 2 or 3 or whatever, they just do such a good job of getting second chance opportunities and just laying it up or dunking it at the rim. Can Yale sort of manage that? And I think that's where it's going to get interesting, because I think Texas A&M, to me, is probably more physical than that maybe Auburn team was last year that played Yale, and I think that could be the difference here, but I'm completely staying away from this game. I want no part of it.
Yeah, and by the way, Buzz Williams been there 5 years at A&M, only one tournament win so far. So, it's put up or shut up time for him. All those great runs at Virginia Tech, he's got to put it together at A&M finally. Give me a thought on Tennessee real quick. I've had somebody tell me they think this is Rick Barnes' best group he's had. Chaz Lanier, obviously the whole group has been so fun to watch all year. But I kind of start to look at the draw and I go, barring a rematch with Kentucky in the Sweet 16, which could be they're 0-2 against them this year, but I kind of like Tennessee how this sets up for them.
I'm scared how much I like Tennessee in this spot. I feel like that's the narrative I pushed all week. I'm somewhat terrified that I'm so confident in Tennessee's ability to not just maybe get to the Elite Eight, but also get to the Elite Eight with some chances for chaos up there in the top part of the bracket if you get a Gonzaga-Houston matchup in the second round. I think the Zags are the kind of team that could give Houston a little bit of trouble. But even if Tennessee gets Houston, I think you think about how that game will play out stylistically. It's not one that Tennessee will be favored in. Houston will be the favorite, but I'm like, that's probably what you would rather see if you're Tennessee than maybe, one like a Duke type setting. I don't think that's a great matchup for Tennessee. Houston maybe feels a little bit different because it's going to be a lower scoring type game and you're going to try to win it defensively. So I really like Tennessee's path here. Now, of course, I think UCLA under Mick Cronin, they can be a little stingy. That's one where you don't want to look past the second round. But if they get there, you said, that possible rematch with Kentucky. We always say it's hard to beat a team 3 times. I also think that I've gotten a little bit more intrigued by what's going to happen in Kentucky's part of the bracket. Illinois, think about, they were looking like a 2 seed at some point this season with the way they were playing. Texas has Trey Johnson. He could take over at any time. But I think Xavier's the team that's very intriguing, right? They're playing really well right now. So I'm not convinced, even though initially I was, that Kentucky may just have it so easy coming out of the first round, the first weekend of the tournament. And so should any of that kind of chaos happen, Tennessee, Illinois, what a rematch that would be. What a great game they had earlier in the season, there in Champaign. But I really like Tennessee's path. And if you honestly ask me whose path do I think I'm most encouraged by, of the SEC teams, it may be Tennessee to the Elite Eight, and also it may be Alabama to the Elite Eight. Those are probably the two that I would be most enamored by, possibly heading into this week.
Yeah, last one I wanted to ask you about was this Alabama team, and obviously Grant Nelson, the health of him is a big factor. But I love Mark Sears, man; he's been so good, and the defense has got to play better for Alabama. But man, offense, they could score with anybody. It feels like so. Yeah. I've said it like Nate Oates has taken a step forward each year. He got to the Final Four last year. The only logical next step is to get to a championship game. So, where are you on this Alabama team?
Yeah, like you said it. I think Grant Nelson's, health is obviously the biggest thing. If he's fine and good to go, boy, this we might get you this clip replayed a lot because what I'm about to say about Alabama in this second round matchup. But I do not see a path for St. Mary's and Vanderbilt if that's the match. Either one. I don't really care which one it is. I just think Alabama overwhelms both of those teams with the way they play. The one thing I will say, BYU, if you look at some of the advanced metrics out there, Bart Torvik and all that, and you filter it over the past month, going back to February 16th, BYU is ranked as the number 4 team in the country over the past month. So let's say if BYU makes a little bit of a run there, you get that draw against Alabama, that may be a little bit iffy, but I still like the Tide. That's where one, again, if we're looking at that right side of the bracket, I almost sort of by default, based on looking at it, I'm like, I feel like I'd be way more surprised than not if it's not Duke, Alabama, Tennessee, Houston, because I just think that those teams have kind of proven to be a step above some of the other teams in those regions that could challenge them potentially. But yeah, I mean, I think Alabama's got a great chance. And look, you put them up against Duke. Hey, Alabama can score the ball. And I think to beat Duke, you got to score the ball. And so I hope that's the matchup we get, because I think it would be so fascinating to see if the Tide can overcome that one. And, you know, we'll see. Can we get that all-SEC Final Four? I'm not ashamed to admit, when I filled out my first bracket, of course I was the guy who got all the SEC semifinals from the SEC tournament in the Final Four. But I don't know. There are some potential pitfalls. But again, overall, I kind of like the draw for these teams.
I mean, I'd say at this point, at minimum, SEC's got to have 2 in the Final Four, right?
I agree.
Like, 14 in, you got to get 2 there.
Yeah, I think anytime you have, you know, the top overall seed, quite honestly, what feels like the top overall seed in Florida based on how they're playing right now, and then you have these teams, again, like Alabama, Tennessee, who just feel like they're built for success based on the way they're playing and their draw. I mean, yeah, I think you probably got to get 2, and I think that's where, look, something's going to happen here early on in this tournament. Remember, there are like a couple different potentials for SEC teams to meet, as we talked about. Tennessee, Kentucky in the Sweet 16. You've got the potential for Alabama, Vanderbilt to play in the second round. Florida, Oklahoma to play in the second round. So the SEC teams, because there's so dang many of them in this tournament, they're going to have to get knocked out early because they might wind up playing each other. So anybody who just wants to judge by the numbers, you have to remember, if the SEC only gets a certain amount, you're like, what happened to them all? Well, there's so many in the tournament, they had to play each other and somebody had to lose. So that might wind up being the case, but I'm with you. I think you got to get at least 2 in the Final Four to feel good about it. I think the magic number for the Sweet 16, I like 6 maybe. I think when you look at the way the bracket fills out, if you can get 6 there, that to me is kind of meeting the expectation.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see how far they go. And again, pressure's on. Somebody's got to win it from the SEC eventually. So let's see who can put it all together. Blake, always good to catch up, man. Always our annual visit once a year. Always good to talk with you. And let everybody know all the great stuff you guys got going on over there at Southeastern 16.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chris. Yeah, find us on YouTube, Southeastern 16. We've got all of our 14 game previews up for every single first-round game, looking at the matchup and everything like that. Of course, we'll be reacting live to all the action this week as well. So, yeah, follow Southeastern 16 on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheBlakeLovell.
Great stuff, as always. More Locked On SEC right after this. Hey, guys, ever check your bank account and wonder where did all of my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building your wealth. When you first start Monarch, you're going to realize just how much you're spending on food delivery. It'll make you want to budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Go manage your money with your partner and make it smoother than ever with Monarch Money. Take control of your finances. Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONCollege at MONARCH money.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, we're along here, Locked On SEC. Our thanks again to Blake Lovell for joining us to get ready for all things NCAA tournament. Your last chance, guys, to take a look at your brackets and figure out where the bracket busters will be. And so just to kind of run through the SEC teams one more time before we get you set for day one of action. I like Auburn to win their first round game, of course, over the 16 seed. I like Yale to upset 4C Texas A&M. Maybe come back to bite me. Aggies, forgive me if they do, but I like Yale to beat the Aggies. I like North Carolina to beat Ole Miss. Again, there's a reason why the Tar Heels are the favorite. Chris Beard is a good head coach, though. I mean, look, get those guys up. Maybe Padula hits a big 3 to win it again or something like that. But I've got only one SEC team surviving the first round in the South, and that is Auburn. I'm giving L's to Texas A&M and Ole Miss. How about in the West? I've got Florida beating Norfolk State. That one's easy. I've got UConn, the 8 seed, beating 9 seed Oklahoma. Sorry, Porter Moser. Again, go shock me, and I would take that. Man, I've got an SEC massacre happening here so far. I've got Drake beating Mizzou. I just think Drake is a better team at 30-3 overall. I think Mizzou, they've been up and down all year. Some nice wins, some bad losses. So give me Drake to upset Mizzou. And you know what? I've gone back and forth on this with Arkansas. I don't think this is one of the best Arkansas teams, but they've got talent, man. All week I've been picking Kansas to beat Arkansas and Bill Self. Give me Arkansas. Give me the Razorbacks with Boogie Flan back in action. I'm going to take the 10 seed over the 7 there. So coming out of the day one in the West, I've got Florida winning. I've got Oklahoma losing. I've got Missouri losing, but I've got Arkansas with the upset. Give me Calipari versus Patino in that second round action this weekend. Can't wait for that. How about in the East? As we run through it, I'm taking Baylor over Mississippi State. Again, I'm sorry. I've got these lower tier SEC teams all losing in the first round mostly. I'm taking the Baylor Bears. I know it's been not a great year for them at 19-14, but I trust them a little bit more. Chris Janz's bunch, what did I say? Has only won 2 games in the last month, and they were both against LSU. Not good enough. I'm taking Vanderbilt to get upset by or to lose to St. Mary's. I just think St. Mary's is the better team. And then, of course, I'm taking Alabama over Robert Morris. So in the East, I've got Mississippi State losing to Baylor. I've got Vanderbilt losing to St. Mary's. I've got Alabama beating Robert Morris. And then in the Midwest, as we look at the SEC teams here, again, we're filming this as Texas is playing Xavier, so don't know if they're going to even come out of that. I'm assuming Xavier's going to win that one, so I'm going to assume Texas doesn't even make it to the field of 64. And then I got Tennessee beating Wofford. I got Kentucky beating Troy. So both those teams hold serve there. I'm taking Gonzaga over Georgia. Georgia's another team that hasn't played great all season. They've played above their head, but better than people expected. But I just don't think good enough to beat a 25-8 Gonzaga team. Although it's not a great Gonzaga team, I think they're better than this Georgia team. And so there you have it. Those are our picks on the SEC teams. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And hey, for your second listen, check out the Locked On College Basketball show with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here. Be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. It's been Locked On SEC. Enjoy the tournament, everybody. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.